Thank you, Dr. Rob. Find more Code WAC episodes on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, uplifting the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. I'm Brenda Gazzar.
The Leslie Marshall Show, the only true democracy in talk radio, of, for, and by you, the people. Live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com. Call in with your thoughts at 888-6-LESLIE.
Here to set you free. Happy New Year. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome back. Only True Democracy and Talk, and glad to have you with us. We are live, Monday through Friday. What time is it? 3 p.m. Eastern. Forget the date and the time with all this craziness. Good to be back with you. I hope you all enjoyed your holidays, your Hanukkahs, your Christmas, your Kwanzas, and your New Year's. It's good to be with you. We have a great guest, Charlie Cook, joining us from Cook Political Report, coming up in this hour. I'm excited about that. You should be as well. But right now, let's start it and do a little thing, which we did last year. We'll do it in this year, in the new year. Let's ring it in by checking what's ripped. Love those headlines. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, will object to the certification of Arizona's Electoral College votes tomorrow. That's according to two sources who confirmed his plans to Axios. So why does this matter? Senator Ted Cruz is one of 13 senators now who have threatened to object to President-elect Biden's Electoral College victory. Arizona is at least the third state whose certification Republican lawmakers plan to challenge. Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Montana, has said he's from Missouri, right? Has said he'll object to Pennsylvania's certification, while Senator Kelly Loeffler, a Republican from Georgia, and I say Loeffler because a lot of us say Loeffler. I've been saying Loeffler, but somebody corrected me today. You say Loeffler, I say Loeffler, right? A Republican Georgia says she'll object to the Georgia results. Which is interesting because she's running in the state of Georgia. And if she wins, does that mean that, and if she objects to the Georgia results, does that mean that she's questioning whether she in fact her running against Collins was accurate as well? I don't think people understand this. If you object to the presidential election in the state, you're also having to object to the senatorial races and the House races and any other races in that state. And the reason I say that is, yes, there are some states or some ballots within states where you just vote for president, but that's not the norm. It's not the majority. What you have, as I had and many of you had, is you get to vote for who is up for re-election in your state. Now, for House members, that would be everybody in your state because they're a 2-year term, and that's every 2 years, right? So then you have the Senate races that are up. And, for some of you, there are gubernatorial races and, of course, state legislatures. If you are questioning, you cannot just say, I'm questioning the person's ballot for Joe Biden, because every ballot that you question that was cast for Joe Biden in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Georgia, you have to question every other candidate that individual voted for, quite frankly. And believe it or not, there are Republicans who voted for Joe Biden, but voted for Republican Senate, voted for Republican House members, voted for Republican governors, voted for Republican state legislators. So Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, he's going to object to Pennsylvania certification, and Senator Kelly Loeffler to her own state. And then again, what is the precedent being set? If she wins tomorrow, I'm sorry. I know you think I'm the karma biatch of all time, but if she wins tomorrow, shouldn't her victory also be contested? If you were saying that Georgia has a fraudulent and faulty voter system, a fraudulent ballot system, if you are saying that the state of Georgia's outcome cannot be trusted, then it has to not be trusted whether you're a Democrat or Republican, folks. I mean, I'm sorry. 2+2 is not 4 when it's convenient for you or your party. And why are you not contesting the votes in Mississippi or Alabama? Because there were only 4 states that counted their mail-in ballots last: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Alabama, and Mississippi. Why aren't they contesting those? Because their guy won in those. Why aren't they contesting North Carolina? They didn't announce their results the evening of or the day after the general election, because their guy won. This is, if you look up the word hypocrisy, there are pictures of these people, and if not, there should be, in the dictionary next to the word hypocrisy. This is the blatant hypocrisy. And I would be as PO'd by, quite frankly, if my party Democrats were doing this as well. Now, Cruz is leading a separate coalition of 11 senators. He will be joined in the House in his Arizona objection by Congressman Andy Biggs, a Republican in Arizona, who, by the way, should give up his own seat if he questions there. The Washington Post first to report on these plans. Now, Cruz is choosing to object to Arizona in an effort to bolster his request for an electoral commission on alleged voter fraud early on in the certification process. States are certified alphabetically, so that means Arizona will be the first battleground state brought to the joint session of Congress. The Trump campaign has repeatedly lost lawsuits, 62 as of this morning, seeking to overturn election results, including in the state of Arizona. But I want to be clear. The Attorney General of the United States, appointed by Donald Trump, Bill Barr, who's had his head so far up Trump's you-know-what, said no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Homeland Security, no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Federal Election Commission, no evidence of widespread voter fraud. The Supreme Court, 61 courts, no evidence, either knocked down in court or no evidence that you don't have of your claim that we can even put it into a courtroom. 50 states, all 50 of the United States, and all 50 governors in those states certified the election that Joe Biden won. He is the president-elect. He will be the president and inaugurated on January 20th, and that Donald Trump is leaving. Now, on TV earlier today, Bret Baier said something that I agree with 100%. Part of the problem here is, and I'm paraphrasing, but part of the problem is that you have Republican leaders like Ted Cruz not clarifying what they mean, because they can contest, they can argue, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump will not be the next president. Donald Trump will be leaving the White House one way or the other, and Joe Biden will be inaugurated and will be the next president of the United States and is the president-elect. And nothing that these people do in the certification process will change that, because Congress, via our Constitution, does not decide the president. They does not decide our elections. Our Electoral College does, based on the votes of the American people. So what bothers me, too, is that there are a lot of people out there who are not informed, who don't know their Constitution, and who are not being told by these leaders. These leaders are leading them to believe that there's hope for their candidate, Donald Trump. And that's not true. And these people are just doing it, these politicians, for their own political gain. And God is my witness, in 2022, if we don't win in Georgia 1 or 2 seats tomorrow, in 2022, I pray for a blue tsunami, if nothing else, to slap these individuals in the face with the Constitution of this country that they pissed on for their own political gain, and pledging their loyalty, not to their constituents, pledging their loyalty, not to this country, pledging their loyalty, not to the Constitution, violating the very oath that they took this week in support of a man who has a cult-like following. And in 4 years, even if he runs again, I don't think there'll be as much support for him, because Americans have very short memories. That's not my opinion. That's factual. Quote, I assembled a coalition of 11 senators that we are going to vote to object the electors, not to set aside the election. That's very clear, okay? They are not voting to set aside the election. So any of you watching me right now who are huge Trump supporters or think that this is going to change the outcome, it isn't. Listen, I assembled a coalition of 11 senators that we are going to vote to object to the electors, not to set aside the election. So their beef is within the states and the electors, but they're not questioning the outcome, okay? I don't think that would actually be the right thing to do. This is what Ted Cruz said on Mark Levin's show yesterday. Quote, but rather to press for the appointment of an electoral commission that can hear the claims of voter fraud, hear the evidence, and make a determination as to what the facts are and to the extent in which the law was complied with. You know what? Do it. But after, not now. This is not the time to do it. Everybody wants the person who was rightfully elected to be rightfully elected and to be put in their proper position. And by the way, I don't think those House or Senate members should have been seated because they violated the oath that they put their hand on the Bible and vowed to uphold. They already violated it. That's called sedition. Republicans' objections to the certification process are virtually guaranteed to fail. Democrats hold a majority in the House. A number of Republican senators have condemned their colleagues' efforts. Look at Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham and I agree on something. You know the Republicans are doing something wrong when two Republicans with those names agree with me. Oh, we don't have time for the rest of this? We're going to take a break. When we come back, are we doing an extended rip today, Mark? Good. More rip in the headlines right after this. I'm Leslie Marshall. Don't go away.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day Americans awoke to national headlines that the strike wave already underway since the previous fall would most likely continue and intensify well into the new year. Close to 500,000 workers across several industries had been on strike for months. The immediate post-war labor unrest came as a result of slashing wages, hours, and jobs, while productivity rose as industry engaged in peacetime reconversion. Newspapers anxiously stressed that President Truman and the Department of Labor were working overtime to get hundreds of thousands of UAW members demanding a 30% wage increase back to work. The press feared another 1.5 million would be idle before the month was out. UAW officials, whose members had been on strike for 43 days, stated theirs was a strike against breadlines soon to come if wartime wages and standards of living were not maintained. Headlines Airlines counseled the public on looming strikes from steel, packing, phone, and appliance workers. The Packing House Union announced 200,000 workers across 147 plants would walk out within 2 weeks, while steel workers announced 700,000 more were ready to strike. The UE prepared 200,000 of its members to strike at GE, Westinghouse, and GM's electric division, while phone workers and related industries planned a walkout of 250,000. President Harry Truman responded with fact-finding boards that would impose 30-day strike bans while investigating strike-breeding industrial disputes. He also invoked the threat of widespread seizures if necessary, and did so in a number of industries including coal, packing, and the railroads. 1946 saw the largest wave of striking workers taking to the picket lines in U.S. history, fighting for better wages, hours, and conditions.
Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets.
Yeah, we got some music, new music for the Happy New Year. Thank you, Marky Mark Kamaldi, our wonderful executive producer. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome back. Continuing with what's ripped from the headlines in this new year of 2021. Take a listen to this audio. This is CNN's Jim how do you say his name? Sciutto. It is Sciutto. Thank you. I was going to say it wrong. I don't know why, because I read it more than I hear it. Anyway, here's CNN's Jim Sciutto pushing the GOP Congressman Clay Higgins, who will object to certification of electoral votes over baseless claims of election fraud. Take a listen. This is a good exchange.
What evidence do you have that the Justice Department does not?
Well, we have a preponderance of evidence that election crimes may have been committed in 6 of the sovereign states.
What evidence?
Especially
give me one example.
Of the
give me one
sovereign
example.
States. In Georgia, changed the statutory requirements for reviewing signatures. Pennsylvania eliminated signature requirements.
That's not true. The Georgia election official Sterling rejected that
I
very.
I can go on and on, but let me.
He rejected it point by point yesterday. So I'm asking what evidence you have to contradict the state Republican election official there, as you're claiming right now. What evidence do you have?
Good sir, I say again, we have a preponderance of evidence that crimes may have been committed, election crimes. The threshold for investigation is reasonable suspicion.
Cite one example.
I've just cited several. You're being rather combative. I do believe you invited me on your show, and I'm willing to have.
But if someone makes a false claim on my show, I will contradict it.
I have in my office right now hundreds and hundreds of pages citing evidence that crimes may have been committed.
Give me one example.
I'm an investigator. I've already given you several. You're just repeating your talking points.
I'm not. You said that there was a problem verifying signatures. That was contradicted. That was contradicted yesterday in a press conference in Georgia by Mr. Sterling, and for instance, on verifying signatures. They, in fact, examined more than 15,000 mail-in ballot envelopes, only found 2 with signature issues. So I've contradicted that one. Give me another example.
That's a talking point.
It is. Again, where is the evidence? I get people all the time. And the sad thing is there's so many people out there that really believe that there is evidence. And this is why, to me, it's so irresponsible of these elected officials. I have never seen somebody, I just don't get it. My question to them is it worth it? Is it worth it to betray God, if you will? People prayed to God for this election. God wanted Joe Biden. Your country, your party, all for this man. Is it worth it? Seriously. When he leaves, he'll do something else and he'll forget all about you guys, especially if he starts a reality TV show or a talk show on some network. Come on. Really. Have some dignity. Let's rip another. Atlanta area mail delays, which Postmaster Louis DeJoy promised would improve following a national slowdown last summer, well, they remain far below U.S. postal standards, threatening to disenfranchise thousands of legal voters who mailed in ballots in a pair of pivotal U.S. Senate runoffs this week. Now, according to the most recent, and by the way, so if Loeffler and Perdue win, the people of Georgia, especially minority voters, specifically African Americans, could scream voter fraud and try and put the brakes on this. This is the precedent the GOP is setting. Careful what you wish for. According to the most recent USPS filings in federal court, the agency was processing just 76% of ballots on time as of December 21st in their Atlanta metro region. Okay, that covers most of the northern and most populated half of the Peach State. Now, that means ballots mailed by Georgia voters 3 to 5 days before the runoff elections today, and even some ballots mailed prior to New Year's may not make it to elections offices before the state's January 5th deadline for the votes to count. In case you haven't caught up here, folks, that's called voter disenfranchisement. While it's impossible to know how many ballots were mailed on any given day, the state reported more than 38,000 mail ballots received by local election officials over the weekend. And that's an indication that tens of thousands of additional ballots are likely still in transit at this very moment. Nearly 1 million ballots have been cast by mail so far in this runoff race, 3 million votes total. Now, the USPS Gulf Atlantic region, they covered the southern half of Georgia. They had significantly better marks than Atlanta, but on-time performance for first-class mail had dropped significantly in both regions. That includes from 87% in Atlanta in mid-November to just 54% in mid-December. Now, this would not be voter fraud, but this would be voter disenfranchisement. And this, quite frankly, would be grounds for a lawsuit, I do believe, if the outcome is not to the liking of those minority voters' choices. The USPS agreed to treat all ballots as priority express mail. Now, that typically gets delivered within 1 day. However, that compromise only came as a result of ongoing litigation from those civil rights groups that challenged dozens of Postmaster Louis DeJoy's cost-cutting and delivery-slowing measures in 2020. So we had civil rights groups like the ACLU going to bat and going to court for the voters just so their ballots would be delivered on time and so their votes would count. I seriously, what country are we living in? The agency also added extra staff and deliveries in Georgia leading up to Election Day. How many Republicans do they have overseeing that? Since they have 8,000 now, not 4,000, watching those counting the ballots. I wonder if people, when they get up to go to the bathroom, go, I'm going to the bathroom. Do you want to come watch me pee? A USPS spokesperson said December's increase in mail impacted scores of all products, but election mail and ballots have always been prioritized, and they said they're performing well above other product lines. But despite similar promises to prioritize election mail ahead of the general election, NBCLX found USPS slowdowns disenfranchised thousands of legally cast ballots in key swing states this past fall in November. Now, that did include Georgia. More than 5,000 ballots were rejected because they arrived at elections offices after Election Day. And with more than 20% of mail delayed in the Atlanta region in early November, it is possible that more than 1,000 of the rejected ballots would have counted if the USPS had simply performed to its historical norms. Most key USPS performance indicators did not improve in November. They deteriorated significantly as the holidays in December approached. Delayed first-class mail tripled nationally from November 14th to the 19th. And even next-day priority express mail saw slowdowns in recent weeks, with USPS records showing on-time performance falling to 88%. And that's nationally. Let's rip another. Local officials are turning to online services like Eventbrite to improvise distribution schemes for the COVID-19 vaccine in the absence of federal support and because we don't have a national plan. Millions of lives, along with the country's economic recovery, depend on a speedy and successful rollout of the vaccine, which has failed thus far. But as people hunt, Marco Rubio, who's in his 40s, is getting a vaccine before healthcare workers and the elderly. That is just one of many examples. But as people hunt for scarce information about vaccine availability and delivery processes, there's a lack of coordinated communication, and this risks opening an information vacuum. And what do you have with the vacuum? Misinformation that easily pours in. In Florida, a number of counties are using event platforms like Eventbrite, known for selling concert tickets and coordinating happy hours to schedule COVID-19 vaccine appointments. According to Jesse Ray, a communication specialist for Brevard County in Florida, quote, "This is the only option we have right now. Some services like Sign Up Genius are pitching their availability for vaccine scheduling. Counties across the nation are adopting them, not just in Florida. It's not an ideal approach for some populations, especially seniors who aren't internet savvy. They have to turn to newspaper reporters to help schedule their appointments. I'm Leslie Marshall. That's what's written from the headlines. Picking up Charlie Cook from the Cook Political Report. You don't want to miss this. Quick break. We'll be back right after that. Don't go away.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious. It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
From kitchen tables worldwide, you can hear a chorus of parents chastising their children with the same refrain. Stop playing with your food. Children aside, this rebuke needs to be loudly directed at the profiteers of industrial agriculture. They keep toying with the very nature of food, not to benefit consumers, family farmers, workers, or the environment, but to fatten the profits of Silicon Valley tech giants, food monopolists, and Wall Street financiers. Meet Recombinetics, Inc. It's a high-tech gene manipulation corporation with bioengineers in its labs remaking farm animals. Pigs, for example. Recombinetics wants to mess with the very DNA of Mother Nature's oinkers to make them produce bigger litters to supply the pork factories of brand-name marketers. It's also genetically altering milk cows to withstand hotter weather, so climate change won't reduce the output of huge dairy corporations. Of course, this corporate government collusion to build Franken animals faces a high hurdle in the marketplace, for consumers have shown again and again that they don't want the food they put on their family tables tampered with. The tamperers, however, have a solution to that problem: secrecy. The industry is lobbying to outlaw any requirement that milk and meat produced by genetically altered animals be labeled as such. Better to keep consumers in the dark because, well, if given a free choice, people might reject Recombinetics in favor of natural food. This is Jim Hightower saying, the industrializers are not out to make food better or more affordable for us, but strictly to make it more profitable for them. Rather than remaking animals and the marketplace to benefit corporations that play with our food, let's remake the corporate system so that it cooperates with nature and serves the common good.
Hey there, I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. Only True Democracy in Talk. I'm very excited for our next guest. People often ask me, Leslie, where can you get information that you trust? There are a few places, but one of which is the Cook Political Report. I'm more than thrilled to have today as my first guest in the new year of 2021, Charlie Cook, who's editor and publisher of the Cook Political Report. He's also a political analyst for the National Journal Group and a political analyst for NBC News. Back in 1984, Charlie founded the independent nonpartisan Cook Political Report. Now he has a half a dozen people working on a publication. The New York Times once said it was, quote, a newsletter that both parties regard as authoritative. I agree with that. CBS News Bob Schieffer says it's the Bible of the political community. The late David Broder of the Washington Post, long considered the dean of the Washington Press Corps, once wrote that Charlie Cook is, quote, perhaps the best nonpartisan tracker of congressional races. Back in 2010, Charlie was the co-recipient of the American Political Science Association's prestigious Carey McWilliams Award to honor a major journalistic contribution to our understanding of politics. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should, at Charlie Cook DC. More than a pleasure to have Mr. Cook with us today. Charlie, may I call you Charlie, if not Mr. Cook?
Yeah, Mr. Cook was my father, and he's gone now. So.
Okay. I'm sure I would have liked him too, and I'm sure he's very impressed and pleased with what you're doing. Charlie, thank you for joining us today. So much to talk about. First of all, Donald Trump has been sending mixed messages to the people of Georgia, the voters of Georgia. One, it's fraud. It's just, it's just a mass with fraud. I mean, don't leave your houses. I mean, it's not going to matter. It's not going to count, right? Then we hear him yesterday grandstanding in the northeastern division of the state, section of the state, which is hurting, at least when you look at the numbers now compared to the numbers of voters for the general election that came out to support him. He's saying, look, if you're going to vote for Venezuela, likening Biden to Maduro and talking about socialism and communism, has Trump and his GOP allies, especially people like, Lynn Wood and Sidney Sheldon, has Trump torpedoed the Republican chances in these Georgia runoffs? Because these races are extremely tight. They're virtually tied.
I don't know if he's torpedoed it, but he sure as hell hadn't helped him. I mean, I promise you that no Republican consultant is advising what he's doing. But, he's an unguided missile. And, I think there are a lot of Republican strategists and officials that will be glad when he's gone, although they still worry about how much of a menace he still will be. But there's no question, this is not helping at all. And I would argue that Georgia is the most closely divided state in the country, that every day it's a tiny bit less Republican than it was the day before, and that this race is dead even. And, some of the campaigns have stopped doing overall polls because they know it's plus or minus 1 or 2 points. Mm-hmm. And so what they're doing is polling specific groups, African Americans, soft Republicans, Latinos, they're just for messaging purposes. But this is a dead even race, Leslie.
Charlie, you've been doing this a long time. And have you ever seen anything like this when you have Republicans saying, like, what is the downside for humoring him, talking about Trump, for this little bit of time? No one seriously thinks the results will change. Have you ever seen this cult-like following, whether it's Democrat or Republican, of an individual? And quite frankly, some of them, look at Cory Gardner, for example. He pledged his allegiance to Donald Trump, knowing he had his own head on the butcher block. I just don't get this.
Well, I understand exactly what you're saying. For a lot of these guys, if they keep a distance, they hurt themselves with the base. And if they put their arms around them, they hurt themselves with swing voters. And the immediate danger when you're in a campaign is to lose your primary or to lose your base. And they kind of go for the delayed bad effects. But they're in, these guys, I know Cory Gardner, he was in a no-win situation. I mean, there was literally nothing he could do that could satisfy the base and those suburban swing voters that were going to make the difference. And, at least he can sleep at night because he knows that there's not a damn thing he could have done differently that would have won the race for him.
Whether it's contesting the election results, talking about fraud, saying, okay, time to move on, is there what looks like through the media to the voters a civil war that's in the Republican Party? And will there be further fragmentation of the party going forward? Because some people are saying, look, I mean, there's the Trump party and then there's the Republican Party.
Yeah, no, there's no question there's a civil war going on in the Republican Party. Now, I would suggest, though, that anytime you see a problem in one party, if you look hard enough, you can find a parallel problem with the other. I mean, 4 or 5 months ago, a lot of us were talking about the war that was going to happen between the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the Biden wing if Democrats had picked up 4 or 5 Senate seats and all this about what would the agenda be, aggressively progressive or not. So these tensions are there. But to have someone just pouring gasoline on a fire the way he does is, we've never seen anything like this.
In Georgia, if the Republicans, Perdue and Loeffler, win in this runoff, does that fuel the fire and the possibility that Trump won't go away and will come back in 2024 more so, and that more Republicans will pledge their allegiance to him? In other words, will they give him credit for their victories?
I would flip it around and say, if they lose both, does this help expedite or diminish his clout within the party? And use that as a framework, because he will get the blame, and I think he'll deserve a lot of blame if they lose both of these seats. But the thing is, it's kind of a double or nothing. My guess is that Democrats are either going to win both or lose both, but a split outcome is probably the least likely alternative. Although as close as it is, obviously it could happen, but. I think a lot of Republican elected officials, they're going to be trying to test, okay, what's the threshold that they've got to show allegiance to President Trump, but what's the limit where it starts really hurting them, and to try to kind of calibrate this. And it's, good luck with that. I mean, it'll be like threading a needle. And, but I think in the Senate, you're seeing some, more freedom there than in the House. But in the House, it'll be very interesting to see a conservative leader like Liz Cheney, who is taking a principled stand sort of with the Constitution. Does that help her, or does that hurt her among House Republicans? I tend to think no good deed goes unpunished, but we'll see. Because can you do that in that House? I don't know, and have a future.
Talking about punish, what is the likelihood that Democrats in the state of Georgia, if Perdue and Loeffler are victorious in this runoff election, that they contest the results using the exact same rhetoric that we've heard from Republicans in the state of Georgia with regard to the general election?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, for example, Democrats chose to not contest the 2nd District of Iowa, where the margin was 6 votes. I mean, 6.
Yep.
But because by doing that, they would appear to be hypocritical on that, when a vote's certified, it's certified. So I don't know. You'd have to look and see whether it, how legit it really looks or not. The thing is, if you're not going to overturn it, I'd say turn the corner and start working on the governor's race in 2022, and do it that way. But
Donald Trump will help that race because he's going to campaign against the Republican governor. We're going to take a break, Charlie. We'll come right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about a very interesting hour of dialogue that we heard with the president and Secretary of State, Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. Again, things that you never thought you'd hear in your lifetime. We'll be back right after this. Don't go away.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com. Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council. America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around, and every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect, in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage.
The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at StoryCorpsConnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share. StoryCorps Connect. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Code WAC, your podcast on America's broken healthcare system and how Medicare for All could help. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. After nearly a year of living in the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID vaccines are finally here. What do we know about them and their safety? I spoke with Dr. Rob Davidson, an ER physician and head of the Committee to Protect Medicare.
To me, the only issue is, did this come to market faster than any other vaccine ever? Yes, that is absolutely true. It's also the only vaccine developed in the midst of a pandemic that has been killing this unprecedented numbers of people and killed our economy and, sickening so many people. So the need was there for this rapid development. The technology has been there since 2011, where they've been working on antibodies against certain types of cancer. So that technology's been there. I trust the technology. I appreciate the mRNA technology. If they take a bit of genetic code from the virus called RNA and they put it in a little carrier, they inject it, it gets into your muscle cells, and then that RNA, that bit of genetic code, is taken up by your own body system, and your body makes this protein that looks like viral protein. There is no actual part of the virus. This has all been manufactured in the lab, this genetic code, and then as soon as that protein is made, the RNA goes away. It's dissolved. And the only thing left is your own body's protein that looks like virus. So your body says, this doesn't look like self, and makes antibodies, and that's how you develop an immune response. Relative to any other vaccine technology out there, to me, this appears to be the most straightforward, safest way one could get vaccinated.
The full Code WAC story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of truth. The Leslie Marshall Show.
And we are back with Charlie Cook, editor and publisher of the Cook Political Group. And like I said, he is also a political analyst for NBC News and for the National Journal Group. Please follow him on Twitter. You won't be sorry you did, at Charlie Cook, DC. Charlie, thank you for holding Welcome Back. So much to talk about, and I talk about that phone call. There are people that are saying this is a federal crime, people that are saying it's a state crime. There are 2 congressional members asking the FBI to look into this. There are people talking censure and people talking impeachment. First, have you ever seen anything or heard anything like this in your time? People are saying this is worse than Watergate. Why are so many Americans, and even more so elected officials on the Republican side of the aisle, remaining silent about this? Most people know how disgusting and how damaging and how criminal, quite frankly, this conversation and the content of this conversation, more so, which is more troubling, between the President of the United States and the Secretary of State in Georgia.
Well, people compare it to Richard Nixon and Watergate, but Richard Nixon was never stupid. I mean, he was wrong, but I mean, this is just, how dumb can you be to do something like this? But, it just goes to, we saw what happened to Senator Jeff Flake and Bob Corker when they criticized President Trump, and they got to the point where they couldn't even run for renomination. You saw what happened to Mark Sanford, to Francis Rooney, the House member in Florida. I mean, there's about 55-60% of Republicans that have zero tolerance for disagreeing, for criticism of the president. Just none. And, the last edition of Profiles in Courage, sadly, has gone to the printer. So they just, you can bet that most of them grumble when they talk to reporters and friends and staff and stuff. But they're just not going to step out front, and they figure this will be over before too long. And, they'll have other things to worry about, but not this. But it is absolutely excusable. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if it was criminal or not. And whether Georgia wants to take it up or not, I don't know. But it sure as hell didn't help Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. That's for sure.
Well, I was going to ask you that. You read my mind. How does this help Democrats John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, with the president asking Brad Raffensperger to find more than 11,000 votes?
Well, the Democrats really did come out in really big numbers in terms of early vote. And the question was, were Republicans going to be able to get enough election day vote to catch up? But this adds a question of, will there be some Democrats who probably weren't going to vote on election day who see this and are so appalled that adds more, there'd be more Democrats voting today than there otherwise would be. I mean, it's hard to imagine. I can't imagine any more Republicans than would have happened. And it could sure discourage some soft Republicans, some, suburban Republicans who, they like their tax cuts and their, less regulation and low, all that, but don't like him. This could keep a few of them home. But, when a race is this close, any little thing can make a difference. And this isn't that little.
Well, like you said, he will be blamed. He will be given the victory, or he will be given the blame. A lot of Republicans have said that they were hoping that the candidates would pivot away from Trump. That doesn't seem to be what Loeffler and Perdue are doing. They're both, backing this contesting of, Joe Biden, being president and the outcome of this election. Are you surprised? Because they have kind of gone back and forth in whether they're going to align themselves with Trump or not, based on how it benefits them or not.
Yeah, I think the decision was, and both sides feel that this is basically a turnout race, that there's not much persuasion to be done. It's just who does a better job of getting their people out. And one of the things that we did learn on November 3rd is that while there were a whole lot more people who disliked and disapproved President Trump, and some of them felt passionately about that, when you looked over on the Trump side, it was a smaller number, but boy, there were even more incredibly intense people on that side than we knew, because they were fighting above their weight class. I mean, they really did. I mean, they pulled a lot more votes than anybody thought they were going to get. That I don't think many people thought that they would be able to add much to their 2016 totals, but they did. And so this was just simply a base play. It's like, you know what, if this is what we've got to just give them what they want. this is no time to improvise. And, you know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I do think that this will give some guidance to Republicans for the next 2 years about how close do they want to align themselves with him over the longer haul. So, you know, we'll see. But I just want this damn thing to be over.
I'm with you. I just want to wake up and, you know, could we ever move forward? Do people realize we're in the midst of a pandemic and we have a new strain that's hit our shores in New York and California, and now there's another strain they're saying even more deadly. Come on. I want to talk about that point that you just made with regard to the president, Donald Trump, who won't be president as of January 20th. Do you think he will run again in 2024? And do you think the support for him will be as strong? Because, at least in my experience over the years, Americans have short memories.
Yeah, I don't think. First of all, I wondered whether his psyche could handle losing once, and it doesn't look like he's.
It can't.
I really look. I mean, I don't know the guy, but I really don't think that he could psychologically deal with 2 losses. And that he wants to be the center of attention. He doesn't want it to be a 3-ring circus. He wants to be a 1-ring circus, and he's in the middle of it. But I don't think he'll risk losing twice. But I think he will jack around all the Republicans that are planning on running in 2024, and you know, make things. I mean, I think they'll be able to move around the country a good bit, like pretending like they're campaigning for, you know, a Republican in the Senate in New Hampshire and in Iowa and, you know, things like that. But they've got to be very, very, very careful, because this guy could just take a swipe at him and set him back a long way. But I think this will be a testing period for Republicans to try to calibrate how far away from him can they distance, and how much can they start to rework their party, because their party is in grave danger. It really needs to demographically reposition, but the more active, the more visible, the more leverage that he has within the party, the less Republicans are able to retool themselves for, you know, the next 50 years.
Do you think there'll be anything, any result or outcome or punishment, even a slap on the hand to President Trump for that phone call, for the content?
I doubt it. I mean, I you know, from what I can tell, you have to show intent. Did you intend to subvert the election? And, you know, I kind of doubt that, you could get a conviction, particularly, you know, again, I'm not in Georgia, but I'm not a lawyer, but getting a unanimous verdict against Donald Trump in the state of Georgia would be pretty hard if that's the threshold. So my guess is they won't, but and the Democrats might be better advised just to move on. You know, Georgia Democrats ought to focus on electing Stacey Abrams governor in 2022. And, you know, Biden and his administration have an agenda. Do they really want to be seen as carrying on a legal jihad against Trump? I'd say, you know, let the DA in New York do whatever he's going to do. We're not chasing after this. We've got things to do. We've got to fix things.
Senator Chuck Grassley said that tomorrow that he will be doing Mike Pence's job if the vice president happens not to be there. How likely do you think that is?
I don't know if there's stairs in the vice president's residence, but you know, he could take a tumble tomorrow, you know, tonight, and she's not, you know, have to be at Georgetown or GW Hospital at the time they're doing this. Something may happen that, you know, God knows he'd rather be anywhere else on the planet. I don't feel sorry for him, but I almost do.
Yeah, well, he made his bed, right? Charlie, it's been more than a pleasure. I'm a big fan of yours, and I do trust the Cook Political Report. Thank you.
On this as well. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie, thank you. Charlie Cook, editor and publisher of the Cook Political Group. Like I said, follow him on Twitter at CharlieCookDC. I'm Leslie Marshall. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Wear your mask, social distance, and avoid those gatherings indoors. We got to beat this thing. Happy New Year.